Good afternoon, NetSuite users. Welcome to Mastering Budgeting and Forecasting with Oracle NetSuite and Beyond, our latest addition to the ongoing Business Solution Partners webinar series. Today, we're discussing a topic that is at the heart of the modern business best practices, budgeting and forecasting. But first, I'd like to provide you with a brief introduction and go over some housekeeping notes. This webinar is brought to you by Business Solution Partners. BSP has a 30-year history of providing high-level financial and operational consulting, technology-based solutions to the mid-market and enterprise companies in all 50 states. We are an Oracle NetSuite 5-star solution partner provider, an Adaptive Insights Gold partner, a HubSpot Gold partner, and were recently named AvidXchange's 2019 Partner of the Year. In addition to these accolades, we hold certifications with many other SaaS solutions. We are here to help companies achieve process transformation in finance, sales, operations, marketing, and much more. We represent a wide variety of software and process solutions supported by training to ensure that your company succeeds in the modern business environment. Business Solution Partners is the CFO's trusted resource and a dedicated technology partner for an impressive client list. In addition to the 2019 awards mentioned on the last slide, we're proud members of the Inc. 5000 for 7 consecutive years and have been named a top 100 value-added reseller by Accounting Today magazine 6 years in a row. Our leadership and staff are actively involved with SaaS user groups for NetSuite, HubSpot, and Adaptive Insights across the country. My name is Craig Cook. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Business Solution Partners. Also on today's jam-packed call, I'd like to introduce your presenters, Lynne Jenkins, Hussain Zaidi, Wing Chan, and Cody Johnson. I'll also give a big shout out to our webinar coordinator, Michelle Cronley. On behalf of the entire team assembled here today, I'd like to welcome you to our educational webinar. So we're here today to address a growing concern for finance teams across any vertical. Budgeting and forecasting plays a vital role in the modern business. By setting targets for income and expenditures and measuring performance against these goals, the finance team is responsible for achieving the vision of corporate leadership while keeping the company grounded in reality. The traditional process is tedious, it's labor intensive, and it puts the focus on gathering and validating data rather than analysis. One major factor holding finance teams back, 70% of all companies are still using spreadsheets as the go-to foundation for their budgeting and forecasting activities. As a consequence, 62% of companies report that they don't have time for the most important aspect of the budgeting and forecasting process, analysis. Let's face it, using spreadsheets in your budgeting and forecasting process comes with a lot of challenges. Can you relate to any of these? But what if your spreadsheets could do better? That's exactly what we're here to address today, doing budgeting and forecasting better. Let's take a look at our agenda before I introduce our first speaker. Lynne Jenkins is going to get us kicked off with a discussion around best practices for finance teams to address the budgeting and forecasting process. Then Hussain Zaidi is here to discuss NetSuite's core functionality, available to all users out of the box, as well as a simple module you can purchase and install to enhance NetSuite's native capabilities. Next, we're going to introduce today's audience to 2 add-on products that we believe are the cream of the crop in the SaaS ecosystem for finance teams seeking a more professional approach to the budgeting and forecasting process. Cody Johnson will take us through a tour of Adaptive Insights, and Hussain Zaidi will return with an examination of the NetSuite planning and budgeting tool. You may have heard of NetSuite's option referred to as PBCS, which stands for Planning and Budgeting Cloud Service, but we can officially announce a name change here in 2019. PCBS will now be known as NSPB, NetSuite Planning and Budgeting. At the end of our session, we are going to summarize our findings and then open the floor to our Q&A session and our closing poll. All right, first thing I'm going to do is close the opening poll and report back that 56% of our respondents said that yes, they do have an established budgeting process. 14 or 82% of our respondents today said we're stuck with Excel. And we have a pretty even number across the board just in terms of what are the pain points around the current budgeting process. 29% said inconsistent data. 35% said the import-export of data between disparate systems. 18% identified the inability to create clear and concise reports. 35% said the process just takes too long. 47% of our respondents said the time is spent consolidating data instead of analyzing it. And only 6% said we're really happy with our current processes. So I'm going to close that poll, and I am going to introduce Lynne Jenkins. It's my pleasure to introduce your first speaker, Business Solution Partners Co-Practice Manager for the Adaptive Insights platform, and a consultant with over 25 years experience deploying financial solutions on NetSuite, Adaptive, and Microsoft Dynamics. Lynne joined BSP in 2019 and has already made a significant impact for our company and our clients. Lynne comes to us direct from Oracle NetSuite, where she served as a principal consultant for the financial products division, implementing both Adaptive and the former PBCS. Lynne, at this point, I'm sure our audience is eager to dive in and learn about best practices for budgeting and forecasting, so I'm going to turn the webinar over to you.
Thanks, Craig. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lynne Wilson Jenkins, Practice Manager at BSP. Many of you are experienced planners, but others may be venturing into the world of budgeting for the first time. Today, I want to discuss budgeting and forecasting best practices. If you have an established planning process, you can compare your current process to these best practices. If your organization is budgeting for the first time, this is the perfect opportunity to implement these best practices to ensure you have a good foundation. There are 6 budgeting and forecasting best practices. Number 1, make budgeting a collaborative effort throughout the organization. 2, clearly define the budgeting process. 3, align the operational budgets with corporate objectives. 4, develop a timely and accurate budget. 5, test your budget against changing market conditions. And 6, leverage technology to ensure data accuracy and consistency. Let's look at each one individually. Number 1, make budgeting a collaborative effort throughout the organization. Adoption and buy-in starts with senior management. Someone in senior management needs to be the champion or sponsor and provide vision and guidance to all levels of the organization. All production and overhead department managers need to execute the plan and contribute to the planning process. The hands-on budgeters need to provide all required data in a timely fashion. And be sure to use all internal communication methods to keep everyone abreast of the budget process and get feedback on deadlines, specific targets to be met, and KPIs. Number 2, clearly define the budgeting process. First, define the corporate objectives. At a high level, what does the organization want to achieve? Is it higher revenue, higher net income, cost reductions, etc.? Next, identify KPIs. Identify financial and non-financial key performance indicators or metrics that align with corporate objectives. Then, define the budget level. Determine how general and summarized versus granular and detailed the budget needs to be. What type of assumptions and drivers will you use for revenue and expenses? You need to balance the budget accuracy with the amount of time and effort to create the budget. Getting down into the minutia will impact the length of the budget cycle. Number 3, align operational budgets with corporate objectives. Each department develops financial and non-financial measures to help achieve the organization's goals. Often incentives can be tied to these balanced goals. Also, selecting projects that align with the organization's vision will promote effective and efficient allocation of resources. Number 4, develop a timely and accurate budget. A planning cycle can be prepared in 2 to 3 months. However, if the planning cycle takes 6 months, the budget data could already be outdated and irrelevant by the beginning of the plan year. Number 5, test your budget against changing market conditions. Organizations need to remain agile and flexible to adapt to internal and external changes throughout the year. In order to do that, create what-if scenarios and periodic forecasts, monthly, quarterly, or rolling forecasts to ensure you keep up with market conditions. And lastly, Leverage technology to ensure data accuracy and consistency. A planning and budgeting software can give your organization one source of truth, all your planning, reporting, and dashboarding for the entire company all in one place. Also, planning and budgeting software with BI, business intelligence, can reduce errors, increase accuracy, and increase efficiency by reducing the planning cycle. By following these 6 budgeting and forecasting best practices, your organization will be dynamic and fluid and will experience both tangible and intangible benefits. Thank you. Back to you, Craig.
All right, Lynn, thank you so much for these insights. My hope is that our audience today can go forward and implement some of these best practices in their finance workflows. Let's shift gears now and talk about NetSuite's core product and the Advanced Financials module. Our next speaker is Business Solution Partners Chief Solutions Architect, Hussain Zaidi. Hussain advises our clients on technology, solution design, and process optimization. He has been working with ERP systems for over 20 years and has amassed a wealth of knowledge that goes beyond any single platform. You may recognize Hussain from your local NetSuite user group, where he's a regular presenter on topics like finance transformation and the crowd favorite NetSuite tips and tricks. Hussain, I give the baton over to you so that you can give our viewers some insights into NetSuite's core functionality.
Thank you, Craig, and thanks for the intro. So let's start with the core functionality in NetSuite for budgeting and reporting. And then later on, I think after another session, I'll go over NetSuite Planning and Budgeting add-on, which formerly was known as Planning and Budgeting Cloud Service, or PBCS. Okay, so first of all, NetSuite makes it easy to track and manage budgets. Okay, you simply enter budgets for accounts on a single screen, or copy the budget feature, which will allow you to rapidly create an entire budget based on another budget or on actuals. And you can actually include uplifts and downlifts when you're copying the budget. Alternatively, you can create budgets in Excel and import them via CSV. To create a new budget, if you guys are familiar with NetSuite, you simply have to go to Transaction, Financials, and then set up budgets. If you're on One World, you would select a subsidiary, then pick a budget year and a category, and then fill in the rest of the fields. It's that easy. So as I mentioned earlier, NetSuite allows you to copy budgets. This way you can save time when creating a budget by copying a previous year's budgets or having NetSuite create your budget based on last year's actuals. Okay, very important. So you can also import budget values from CSV file. Now, to access this functionality or this import function, you simply go to Transactions, Financials, set up budget, and import. And as you can see, it allows you to basically map the fields from a source file to the budget fields within NetSuite. Okay, a lot of our clients use this feature to bring budgets in very quickly. Now, with reporting, you can add a budget column on your financial reports, and then you can use formulas for variance calculation. Fairly straightforward. When I do trainings and I do financial report customization training, a lot of these, questions around budgeting are handled by just, variance analysis, calculations, formulas, and adding columns as needed. Now, with the NetSuite Advanced Financials, you have built-in reports that are available to you, okay? So that includes your budget income statements, budget versus actual reports, and you can also create your own specific budget reports. Okay, so there's some built-in functionality that's available with the Advanced Financials. Okay, it also allows you to set up and report on more than one budget for the same set of criteria. This type of, when you use multiple budgets, it could be where you have a typical budget that you want to, compare on or keep track of as, when you have another conservative budget scenario. So, and you can have as many multiple budget scenarios as you want, okay? A lot of times we would have 3 or 4 budget scenarios that the companies would like to keep track of and later on come back and compare. Now, in addition to budgeting, with advanced financials, you get a few more features. So let me just quickly go over it. If there are any questions, I can come back later on the Q&A and answer those. So advanced financials allows you to allocate expenses by GL accounts, class, departments, and locations. You can link amortization schedules to bills, bill credits, jobs, and more. It provides very flexible billing schedule, which could be assigned to sales order line items, very important. And you can integrate billing with sales commissions and sales forecasts. Lastly, but again, important feature within advanced financials is statistical accounts that you can use to store non-monetary values. Okay. So I think that's all I want to cover right now, and later on I'll come back and go over the NSPV. So Craig, back to you.
Great, thanks Hussain. Like you said, Hussain is going to be back a little bit later in our webinar to introduce you to NetSuite planning and budgeting. It's likely that your attendance at this webinar today signals your need to go beyond NetSuite's core budgeting and forecasting capabilities and the limitations of Excel. The awesome thing about working with NetSuite is that the company understands that its core product can't be everything to everyone, but NetSuite makes it easy to leverage add-on software that enhances your core deployment with an open API and support for a variety of SaaS solutions. But hold on a second, let's face it, in 2019, the SaaS ecosystem is extremely crowded. A quick Capterra search for the keyword budgeting reveals at least 60 different SaaS offerings. But today we're here talking with NetSuite users about their particular needs. Business Solution Partners has been a partner on the NetSuite platform for over 15 years, and our experience around budgeting and forecasting has led us to select what we believe to be the cream of the crop. Today, we'd like to introduce you to the two top solutions we recommend to our NetSuite clientele, Adaptive Insights and NetSuite Planning and Budgeting. First up, let's take a look at Adaptive Insights. To give you a quick orientation to the Adaptive product, I'm going to introduce Wing Chan, BSP's account executive for the Adaptive Suite. Wing, can you please provide our audience today with an overview of the Adaptive product before handing the soapbox over to our friend Cody Johnson, who will take us behind the curtain?
Sure thing, Craig. I've been working with budgeting and ERP solutions for over 15 years, so if anyone in attendance has questions after this webinar, feel free to ping our team. We'd love to assist you with understanding your needs, answering questions, and helping you compare viable solutions for your specific requirements. Not everyone realizes this, but active planning is really a continuous, ongoing process. If we select modeling as a starting point, then once the annual budget is completed, you're monitoring progress versus plan, and of course, reporting on actual results and analyzing performance throughout the process, then replanning the business to move forward. Successful firms leverage an ongoing cycle for a continuous 360-degree view of your company's past, present, and future for quick decision-making and agile course correction. In addition, planning is no longer just a finance process. The most successful organizations involve business stakeholders in not only finance, but also sales, marketing, the executive team, operations, and HR in the processes. Thus, viable solutions for automating your processes must be able to do two things. One, handle all facets of a continuous planning process. Two, support planning across stakeholders in not only finance, but all departments in your organization. Adaptive Insights is a popular solution across many industries. In fact, over 4,000 clients benefit from it. Business Solution Partners is a premier NetSuite and Adaptive Insights partner. We spent the past 25 years mastering financial automation for clients. So whether you're interested in integrations to other systems, customizing NetSuite, evaluating Adaptive Insights, or NetSuite planning and budgeting, or simply looking for a partner that understands both systems and how they interact with each other, we're here to help. So that's a quick overview of Adaptive Insights. Let's take a look at the solution in action. To give us a tour of the platform, I'd like to introduce Cody Johnson, Senior Solution Consultant for Adaptive Insights. Cody has worked in finance and FP&A for over 14 years, and before joining Adaptive Insights, Cody was employed by NetSuite on the financial planning team. Cody, thanks for joining us. I'm going to hand it over the screen control to you so you can give us a little tour.
Perfect. Thanks for the introduction, Wing. And so what I'm going to take you through over the next 15 to 20 minutes is just kind of a brief overview of the Adaptive Insights product and the benefits that you would get being a NetSuite customer. To start this out, what I like to do is talk a little bit about kind of that relationship so you'd have an idea of kind of where that originally had stemmed. So the idea behind it was about 10 years ago, NetSuite actually went to market for an FP&A tool, wanted something 100% cloud like they were, ended up choosing Adaptive Insights, and then liking that product so much, they actually, instead of building out that functionality directly in NetSuite, they white labeled Adaptive as NetSuite financial planning for around 8 years. So some of the benefits to kind of that long-standing partnership that we had was first, we have over 850 joint NetSuite and Adaptive customers. So we know NetSuite really well from that perspective. So out of that 4,500, a good percentage are on NetSuite. Now, some of those benefits you get are first being able to have things like single sign-on within your NetSuite account. So for instance, accountants and people that spend a lot of time directly within NetSuite have the ability to have that single sign-on to where they can access all of the functionality of Adaptive down this financial planning tab. Now, second is the integration that you get with Adaptive. So I could also directly go in adaptiveinsights.com as well. So again, two kind of options to get in. But from an integration perspective, there are kind of two main ways to get data into the system. And what I wanted to focus on was Adaptive has their own integration platform built directly inside of Adaptive. And there's a couple of main benefits to that. Firstly, I don't have to manage a third-party application like Adele Boomi or Informatica to pull data. And secondly, it's meant to be owned and maintained by finance. So I don't have to know a lot of scripting or coding to maintain that. It's all through drag and drop and pick lists. Now, Adaptive is source agnostic, meaning that you can really connect to any data source that you may want to, but we'll focus on NetSuite. So having those more than 850 joint customers, hundreds and hundreds of those are actually pulling data directly kind of through our integration with NetSuite. Now, a couple of the things just to kind of highlight here and to kind of point out is from a NetSuite perspective, we've learned a lot kind of throughout those years, right? So first off, we tried to just we just connected through kind of what was called our OEM integration, just connecting through kind of the 6 standard dimensions within NetSuite that everyone's familiar with. Obviously, that broke down as NetSuite started to introduce things like custom dimensionality and things like that. So our latest iteration is actually the ability to go consume and manage saved searches. And so the idea behind it is not only can we consume directly through the API, but also expose those saved searches, which is essentially that querying point of really the database kind of behind NetSuite, as you all are aware. Now, the nice thing there is, traditionally, if you just go through the API with NetSuite, it doesn't expose all of the data. So things like RevRec or calculated fields or some of that custom dimensionality gets lost. But again, through having so many NetSuite customers and learning over the years, we have the ability to really consume any of those data points. Now, just a kind of a quick thought around some of the other sources, just as an idea, most companies will have 3 to 5 different sources of data. So again, whether that's things like Salesforce data for your CRM, or maybe you have HRIS or payroll data, again, we're source agnostic, so we can pull in really any of those data points. Now, just to kind of quickly highlight, if I want to come in and make an adjustment and maintain this data, everything's through drag and drop and pick list. So as an example, as I look at this data points around things like where I land the data or the time frames, or maybe I want to adjust a mapping. So for instance, I have a department map somewhere and I want to change that. It's through pick list opposed to having to script and code that, which again is an advantage we have. And then lastly, being able to define how often I want to pull that data, whether it's daily, monthly, weekly, hourly, really at whatever schedule. I can automate the pull of that data. So kind of coming back to those best practices of being able to pull the data directly from the source, do some data transformation, and then automate that process of getting the data into the system on a regular basis can be really helpful to make sure you have that kind of single source of truth. Now, once I have that data within the system, I could do lots of different things. I'm going to start with kind of showing visualization and dashboarding. So how can I expose any of those data sources that we've brought and then visualize it? Here, just to kind of point out, I have the ability to not only let security dictate what users are able to see within the system. So for instance, if I'm a marketing manager, when I come in, I would only be able to see kind of that particular portion of the data. I also have the ability to build custom views for different users within the system. So for instance, an executive view or a sales view, and have it tailored to what they need to see. Now, when I come into the dashboards, what you'll notice is I have the ability to view this data across, bar charts or pie charts or scorecards, you name it. And I can really organize this data any way that I would like to. But the key here is getting all those key metrics and KPIs for those users to have a quick view of exactly how the business is performing. Now, in this particular example, I'm looking at things like net product revenue, EBITDA, gross margin. One of the keys here is having absolutely as many different versions as you want to do those comparisons and planning that you'd like to. So anything from last year's board-approved budget that's been locked down to as many passes and iterations to this year's budget to where we help a lot of companies get to, which is that rolling forecast. Being able to pull in actuals at a regular cadence and then reforecast out to, of course, the what-if scenarios. So again, I can have absolutely as many of those versions as I like, and then I have the ability even to visualize and report on those all together. So for instance, as I'm looking at my net product revenue comparison, I can see things like last year's actuals, this year's actuals, as well as my forecast, all in one view to see how we're performing, down to things like a P&L scorecard across our actuals versus budget in multiple time frames. Now, one of the keys within the system, though, is everything is drillable throughout. So obviously, driver-based planning and budgeting is obviously super important. And so being able to drill into any number and see exactly where it came from can be helpful. So things like my net product revenue is $5.3 million. Maybe I want to see what customers make that up. I can quickly pivot into that and start to see how that builds up. So customer 5 was the highest. Maybe let's look at what products they're buying. And the whole idea here is that self-service analysis, to be able to get into that detailed information and see exactly what's driving it. Secondly, what I want to point out is not only can I drill directly in and kind of see how it's made up, but I can also drill into transaction level detail. So for instance, I'm looking at a budget data here, and I can see I've got a massive variance here in March. I can start to drill in by function or by location, or I can leverage our Cell Explorer, which is unique to Adaptive, in the ability to get a full picture of the value. I can start to drill in to see where it came from, as well as drill directly into that transaction level detail that gives me a larger picture of not only the GL account, but also things like vouchers and descriptions, up to a couple hundred different columns of data. So again, just gives you that ability to say, instead of, I see that the number's off, instead of having to go back to NetSuite and start digging around or ask accounting to do that, I have the ability to expose that data here directly while I'm doing my variance analysis. Okay. Now, one of the keys behind Adaptive, and this is kind of throughout the product, is just the ability of ease of use and maintenance. And so the idea here is even if I want to do something simple like build a new chart, I can do that as an end user, typically with just a little bit of training. So for instance, if I just want to drag and drop over a chart, like a column chart, I can do that. To things like maybe I want to pull over a waterfall chart as well. I have the ability to do things like change colors and fonts. Maybe I want to adjust things like time frame. So for instance, maybe I want to look at this on a quarterly basis, and maybe I want to pull this into the next year where I know I have some data. Now, the nice thing is this file cabinet then represents all of the data points that are within Adaptive. So no matter what source it came from, whether it's operational data or financial data, once I have that, then all I have to do is drag and drop this onto the charts. So for instance, let's look at our operating expenses in a column chart, or let's look at our operating expenses in a waterfall. And the whole key here is just around ease of use, around being able to quickly build and pivot these and drill in and get some more information around from a reporting side. Okay. Now, from a best practice perspective, one of the big keys is collaboration from a budget perspective. So what I want to highlight here is the ability to have a full process management suite. And so the idea here is, as a best practice, what you eventually want to get down to is kind of that desegregated budget, right, where all the different department heads or really anybody that owns a budget gets within the system. Now, obviously, in an Excel type environment, that's really hard, right? I have to send out all these Excel files. I have to pull them back together, do a bunch of manipulation to try to get those totals, and you know, heaven forbid somebody add a row or break some of the formulas. So the idea here is we make this possible in a really easy format. And so what I'm looking at here is from an admin perspective, setting up one of those particular processes. And those processes can be anything from an annual budget to a marketing plan to a reforecast, whatever those might be. Allocating tasks to individual users within the system, and then being able to see things like an overall progress from an administration view, which tasks are running late in progress and are completed. And even the ability to do things like I can have notes back and forth communicating with users or add attachments. Now, where this becomes really powerful, though, is from that end user perspective. So, for instance, if I want to come in and log in as an end user, I'll show you that exact item. And so the idea here as I log in, first off, I don't have access to the entire system, right? I don't have integration like I showed earlier. I can't change models. As well as I only have access to a few models in the system. But if I come in where I have tasks allocated to me, what will actually happen is, in this example, I have 7 tasks allocated to the left with a description and notes, and then the model is directly to the right that I need to interact with. So again, the benefit here being, instead of sitting on this Excel file with a bunch of tabs of instructions and hoping that they go through that process correctly, I can make it really simple and easy for them to come in and know exactly what they need to do. Now, from a modeling perspective, what you'll notice in the models is it has a similar look and feel to Excel, and that's completely intentional in that most of our end users are coming out of spreadsheets when they get into a system. So we want to make it as easy as possible for that end user adoption. Here we're planning our headcount, which is obviously one of the most important aspects of budgeting for most companies. Typically, that's the highest expense, depending on what industry you're in. But I can come in and plan, in this example, by name, title, residence, start date, end dates, health benefit plans, pay rates, commission targets, maybe, all the different information that I may need to plan. And then I'm just asking that particular user to come in and do things like, put an end date for any users, any of your staff that are leaving, or maybe I want them to add a new hire. The nice thing is when I come in and do this, I can come in and plan this to be hired through drop-downs. It's just making it super easy, right? I want to hire an accountant. I'm going to put them in Texas. Each one of these drop-downs are then going to drive calculations within the system. But it just makes an easy way for these end users to come in and plan. So I might hire, someone for mid-August of next year, and we'll give them $1 million salary that all accountants deserve, and then 100% to my department. And the whole idea being making it super simple for those end users to get into the system and plan. But as a finance person and organization, the nice thing here is we have confidence in these numbers because we're actually in a system that has a full audit trail. I can't break formulas as an end user and that sort of thing. And just little things like, okay, so I made all those decisions. I want to see what the impact of those decisions are in one view. So if I scroll over to that start date, I can see we're calculating all kinds of things like an FTE, a headcount, prorated salary based on that mid-month start date, to things like a one-time recruiting fee hit, to Social Security maxing out quickly. And the whole point being here, having all of that kind of flow through instantly throughout the system. Now, as I kind of, hey, I've completed that, I need to move on to the next task, it's going to do the same thing, bring up that new description, the new notes, and the new model that I need to interact with. Here, what I'm doing is planning out my marketing spend plan by campaign and by product. Now, the nice thing is this can be customized to each of those individual users. So for instance, since I'm the marketing manager, I have this particular model that maybe only I see within the organization and have to plan to. Again, it doesn't necessarily just have to be things like a simple budget across those GL accounts. It could be something more detailed like a plan for marketing in this example. as well as things like travel plans, capital plans, all the way down to being able to see kind of an overall total expense across those GL lines. Now, again, the idea here is any of those actuals I can actually layer in. So I've got this green historical data, as well as kind of that planning data moving forward. Now, a lot of these will be driven based on those kind of models above. So for instance, all my payroll and taxes and benefits accounts are driven from that workforce planning model that we showed, as well as all my marketing GL accounts. So I can see kind of the impact of those decisions all in one view. To things like maybe there's some basic lines that I need to plan, and I could do this a lot of different ways. So, for instance, hard coding data, copying it to the end, to even things like, I want to hold to last year's number, and then I want it to ask me exactly how to spread that back. So certainly proportionally or evenly, using custom assumptions like business days per month, but the whole point being here, lots of different tools to make this process for them as easy and simple as possible when they go through it. Now, I can also include things like dashboards and reports within that particular process. So for instance, after I save that, I may want to look at a report based on all those decisions I made above, where do I actually sit? And so from a budgeting perspective, this might be something where we want this in the process to make sure they're looking at this before they actually submit it to us to see kind of what those impacts are. And so in this example, I've got my operating expenses across. I'm looking at last year's actuals, as well as my working budget. And then we've used some conditional formatting to call out variances. And then what I'm wanting them to do before they submit this, come in and put a note and let me know exactly why I have made this adjustment, right? I hired an expensive accountant, whatever it might be. And then once I have those notes, again, that flows through for everyone. And the key here being, as a finance person, I've only set up one report that I want all these departments to look at, but I can only see marketing throughout, which can be really handy from that perspective. Ultimately, what I would want to do then, once I've completed all my tasks, is then submit the plan. Hey, I'm complete. Once I submit that as an end user, that actually locks me out, right? So I can't come in and then adjust things like my workforce planning model anymore. I can't make any changes. What that'll actually do is send an email to that budget approver, let them know that, hey, I'm complete. They need to come in, approve, reject, whatever they may do, and move it through the cycle. So again, from a best practice perspective, giving the ability to have that collaboration and structure within a system that has a full audit trail, has security, version control, and all those sort of things that lack in an Excel type environment. So again, what I wanted to do just was to quickly kind of introduce the idea of using a solution and kind of how the Adaptive Insights platform makes that easy. But I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Craig to kind of continue on.
Cody, wow, thank you for your excellent overview of the Adaptive Insights product. Please stick around for the Q&A session at the end of our webinar. Ooh, so that was impressive, Cody, and you've given us a lot of information in a really short amount of time. So thank you for that. We're going to shift gears now and bring back Hussain Zaidi. Now, NetSuite Planning and Budgeting is a relatively new product offering from Business Solution Partners. So Hussain doesn't have quite as an extensive demo, but we're going to do our best to give you a comprehensive overview of NetSuite's own solution. So Hussain, welcome back.
Thanks, Greg, again. And everyone who's still on the webinar, thanks for sticking here. So what I'm going to be going over is NetSuite Planning and Budgeting, NSPB. As Craig mentioned, it used to be called Planning and Budgeting Cloud Service, PBCS, but with NetSuite, there's always a new name change around the corner. So it's called now NSPB. Just like with Adaptive Insights, with NSPB, you can use it for operational expense planning, your capital expense planning, revenue planning, personnel planning, income statements, balance sheets, statements of cash flow. It has a smart view office integration, which lets you create awesome reports for board books and executive management. And if I haven't mentioned the built-in NetSuite integration. Now, going a little bit deeper, with NSPB, you can build advanced budgets and forecasts that's fully integrated to NetSuite. You can create advanced dashboards that combine data from multiple data sources, including data sources other than NetSuite. For example, if you're using Salesforce with NetSuite, you can create a dashboard that combines data from both the systems. It is built on Oracle Hyperion platform, which is both powerful and scalable and has been around for quite some time. Now, because NSPB is built in the cloud, it's very fast to deploy. So you can spend more time analyzing your data and less time in data imports and manipulations. You can build business rules right in and build complex calculations as necessary. You can use sandbox, and not one, but multiple sandboxes to create different what-if scenarios. You can use attributes to combine and analyze data in ways that don't have to define or don't have to be defined inside your ERP system. So, certain information comes from ERP, rest of the information you can bring in at the NSPB level, okay? Now, as I mentioned, built-in dashboards are great for visibility, and they're easily configurable by end users, very important. It also contains built-in workflows and approvals that allows you to know where you are in your budgeting process. The Smart View feature, which I talked earlier, provides integration with Microsoft Office. You can easily create ad hoc reports and queries from Excel without needing to understand underlying data structures. Smart View also integrates with Word and PowerPoint, allowing you to easily create your board reports and board books. Approval workflows, along with security rules, make NSPB a powerful tool to satisfy your current and future planning and budgeting needs. So finally, what I have also included here is an overview of the planning process if you're using NSPB, okay? So most of the time, you'll start with actuals that are brought in from NetSuite via the built-in integration. Once the actuals are in, you can now gather department budgets, via Smart View or via web. After that, you can leverage NSPB workflow to gain approvals and audits for audit submissions. You can also use approvals for your foreign models. Then, once everything is approved and ready to go, you can output board quality reports automatically with Web Reporting Studio or in Smart View with full Microsoft Office connectivity. And finally, with NSPB, you can cycle through large data sets very quickly because it's built on the Hyperion platform and perform analysis using pre-built statistical methods that will improve your budget and your recommendations to your management. I think that's all I had on NSPB. If you guys have questions, let's go through them in the Q&A session. Back to you, Craig.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Hussain, and to all of our presenters today for your insights. So we're nearing the end of our presentation. Let's summarize today's discussion. The traditional budgeting and forecasting process is broken, and Excel just doesn't cut it. But NetSuite's core product offers some functionality around budgeting and forecasting, though it wasn't really built for this specific and important purpose. You can extend the functionality of NetSuite with the advanced financials modules and/or look to the SAS ecosystem for a more professional approach to FP&A. NetSuite makes it easy with a whole slew of built for NetSuite products, built both by NetSuite itself and by third-party vendors who work alongside NetSuite to ensure the community has the tools it needs to thrive. From the vast ecosystem of available budgeting and forecasting products, Business Solution Partners has identified the two category leaders that we believe are the best fit for NetSuite users. Adaptive Insights is one of these options, and we took a look behind the curtain of this solution to highlight its functionality. NetSuite has its own product, NetSuite Planning and Budgeting, or NSPB, which offers its own unique set of tools and workflows to address the needs of the modern finance department. Both of these platforms have their strengths and their weaknesses. Determining factors like company size, vertical, and your unique business needs help Business Solution Partners identify the right platform for your company. And we strongly support both products through implementation, integration, customization, support, and training. That brings us to the Q&A. The floor is now open to your questions. Please locate the Q&A function on your Zoom webinar interface and submit your questions about budgeting and forecasting to our panel of experts. At this time, we're also going to open our closing poll to get some feedback from today's audience. All right. So I'm going to welcome all of our panelists back for the Q&A section, and I'm going to open with a question from Robert. Robert writes, we do monthly forecasts, and this is a pain in Excel. How easy is it to combine actuals months and budget months into a forecast in Adaptive or NSPB? And I think I'm going to send this one over to Hussain. Why don't you grab that question?
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, so Robert, it's very straightforward. Both NSPB and in Adaptive, you can have your budgets and you can overlay your actuals and your forecasts. So no issues there.
All right. How about this question here? When we budget for payroll taxes, we are not able to calculate for the maximum caps for Social Security, FUTA, and SUI. Can either Adaptive or NSPB do that? Lynne, why don't you field this question?
Okay. Thanks, Craig. In both Adaptive and NSPB, you can set assumptions for Social Security, FUTA, and SUI rates and maxes so that your budgeted payroll taxes will be more accurate and in line with your actual when you do your budget versus actual comparisons. So you will see your taxes, your budgeted taxes for the first few months of the year, which is typical, and then they will drop off or trail off as those caps are reached. So you can do that in both Adaptive and NSPB.
Great, thanks, Lynne. Natasha raised her hand in the chat and asked us about the cost of advanced financials, which is the first module that we discussed as part of the NetSuite core. I don't think we want to get into pricing right now, up to 10 full users, but I will say, Natasha, we'll be in touch with you. We'll help you out with that question, and we'll talk about pricing with you around the advanced financials module for a small size company. So thank you for that question.
Yeah, Craig, just for Natasha, we would also like to know if it's standard NetSuite or NetSuite One World. So the pricing is different based on if it's One World or standard. So
she says standard.
Okay, standard. Cool.
Great.
Yeah,
so Natasha, we'll hook up with you offline and we'll answer that question. I've got another question here. We have several entities and departments, and it's time consuming to roll up everything to the consolidated parent. How would that work? Cody, why don't you give us your insights on that?
Yeah, happy to. So that's one of the big benefits of being within a system. So not only things like layering actuals become much easier, but things like, the automatic aggregation of that data. So anytime that, say, a department head puts in some data down at the department level, I can immediately go report on that and see it at a total company level because of the structure of having a system. So that's a big benefit opposed to Excel, where I have to do a bunch of work of kind of that manual aggregation and making sure everything lines up.
All right. Well, our Q&A has slowed down a little bit. I'm going to continue to say if you have more questions about this presentation today, please feel free to drop some questions into the Q&A or the chat, and we're going to try to answer them as we close out the webinar today. But that about wraps it up for us. I'll say if you've enjoyed our time together and would like to access more great content like this, please visit our YouTube page and hit the subscribe button. You can also find Business Solution Partners on LinkedIn, and we highly encourage you to follow us so that you can stay informed about our upcoming webinars, blog posts, white papers, announcements, and just general fun stuff that we share on LinkedIn. We've made it really easy by providing you with some custom domain redirects. So all you've got to do is go to www.bspny.com/YouTube or /LinkedIn, and it's going to take you directly to our social pages. And at this point, I'll just say on behalf of myself, Lynne, Hussain, Wing, Cody, and Michelle, and the entire team here at BSP, I'd like to extend my thank you for your participation today. Just a reminder, We're going to be delivering a recording of this webinar as well as a downloadable version of the presentation deck in our follow-up email, and you can expect to receive that within 3 to 5 business days. Should you or anyone at your company need assistance with FP&A, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to engage with you and help you transform outdated manual processes into a streamlined and automated flow. We're going to leave this webinar live for just a few minutes so that you can have a chance to answer our feedback poll questions. And, if you have any more in the Q&A, please throw it in there and we'll come back and we'll answer those questions. Thanks again for all of your participation today. We had a great webinar panel. We had a great webinar audience, and I really look forward to our next event, which we'll be announcing very soon. One last reminder that Business Solution Partners hosts NetSuite user groups in California, both in NorCal and SoCal, as well as on the East Coast in the New York region. If you live in one of those areas, come on out to a NetSuite user group and you can see great presentations like this, network with fellow NetSuite users. We usually have presentations on new releases and all sorts of tips and tricks around the NetSuite platform. If you don't happen to live in NorCal, SoCal, or the New York City region, check out the NetSuite user groups online. Search for your local user group, get involved. They're run all across the country from sea to shining sea, and it is a great way to meet fellow NetSuite users, have conversations around your pain points and issues, learn about other platforms that bolt on and add on, built for NetSuite apps and extensions. New functionality like Suite Commerce and One World, and just the whole gamut of the available options as a NetSuite community. Thank you again for all of your participation today. We look forward to seeing you next time, and we're going to end our webinar right here.